Welcome to Comicstorian, where we break down your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues into teeny tiny bits, and then we read them back to you dramatically. Today we're going to be covering some Green Arrow, because that show is either back now or coming back real soon. And we're going to be telling you where Roy Harper has been this entire time. In our last video, Ollie was being framed for a string of murders that happened to have all of the victims killed by the Green Arrow. In an attempt to stop the killing of the next target, Ollie learned that the man behind it all was Malcolm Merlin, the original Dark Archer. In the final fight between the two of them, Ollie gained the upper hand, but before he could stab Malcolm with an arrow, John Diggle knocked him out, taking Malcolm away. Now, let's see about how Roy Harper is going to be returning. Growing up, Roy Harper wasn't the best kid around. In fact, he was pretty bad. He would lie, steal, and hide out in the malls until after hours when no one was there to steal more things. However, one night on one of those nights, Roy had pickpocketed the one and only Oliver Queen. As Roy stands in a hunting shop in the mall trying out a new bow, he hears the voice of Oliver telling him he did real good. Disengage the alarm system and set the security footage into a continuous loop. Roy turns back asking, "Who?" And Ollie dodges the arrow, telling him, "You can keep the money. I would just like my wallet back." Ollie quickly disarms Roy, pinning him down, telling him, "I have two questions. First is, where did you learn to use a bow? And second, who are you?" The awkward meeting between the two of them led to a rather unique kind of friendship. But even with Ollie extending this friendship, that still didn't stop Roy from stealing liquor and helping himself to Ollie's hidden training room. As Roy breaks the locks and looks around inside, Ollie tells him that breaking into a mall is one thing, but overriding the security system to his HQ, that's another. Ollie takes the beer from Roy, telling him, "That is rather impressive. You're gonna have to work for me. I need you to quit being such a dumbass, and rule number one, no drinking." Roy says, "Wait, you're the Green Arrow?" And Ollie places his baseball hat on backwards, telling him, "That's a speedy deduction. So it's probably time that we start answering each other's questions." As time went on, Roy found himself working right alongside Ollie, mainly because Ollie could never remember which arrow was which. Ollie says that when he assigned him to tech support, it wasn't to make a toy box for him to carry around. These things are a little too complicated. What happened to regular arrows? Now in the current times, Roy arrives at the Spokane Indian Reservation during a protest to stop the construction of a pipeline that would pass straight through the reservation. As Roy gets out of his Jeep, a few of the Native Americans ride up on their horse. One asks, "What are you doing here, brother?" And Roy tells Bird that it's good to see him. He's come to help. Bird says they don't want him here. Go play with the reckless son somewhere else. Roy asks if they've gotten his letters, and Bird says the ones that he stopped sending years ago, they'd hoped that he died from an overdose. Roy tries to say that he was his father too, and Bird stops him again, shouting, "You don't get to call him that. You were a stray dog that my father felt sorry for, and you killed him." But before Bird could go on, there's an explosion, and the opposing group, the ones who want the pipeline, come speeding and firing their guns. Roy knows who they are. They're the militia, also known as the Libertarians, who call themselves the Wild Dogs. Bird rides off towards the oncoming group, and he tells Roy that he'll deal with him later if he's not already dead. Roy begins to fire his arrows, taking out whoever he can, and just before one of the men can stab Roy, he's shot in the back. Roy looks over, asking, "What are you doing here?" And Ollie says, "It's been a long time, Arsenal." Roy goes back to shouting, telling him this isn't your fight, and Ollie says that he's going to guess that that was the same reception that the tribe gave him too. Roy takes out the last man, and Ollie says, "All right, we need to bait these guys away. Just follow my..." And Roy stops him, telling him, "I'm not following you anywhere," and he punches Ollie to the ground. As Roy stands next to the pipeline, they both see that it says Queen Industries on it, and he tells Ollie, "This is your fault!" Roy then shouts, "Do you know how many times I've dreamed of beating you to a pulp and knocking the rich and pretty right out of you?" As the militia continues to raise the reservation, Ollie says, "We don't have time for this. Go ahead and get it all out, Speedy." Roy pulls back his fist, telling him, "Don't call me that! You killed that dumb, hopeless kid. My name is Arsenal." Ollie gets back up, telling Roy, "You aren't the only one who's changed, and I'm not saying that I don't deserve this, but I'm not the man I used to be." Off in the distance, Roy spots Bird being attacked, and he jumps on a horse and he yells, "I'm coming!" Ollie pulls out his bow and he lets 3 arrows fly, clearing the path for Roy. As Roy rides by, he grabs Bird, helping him onto the horse, telling him that he's gonna help him whether he likes it or not. But before getting away, one of the men fires a gun, hitting Bird in the back. The sounds of a motorbike can be heard, and Dinah rides up, knocking some of the militia over, telling Ollie that they need to hurry. They're on the losing side of this fight. A short while later, as everyone retreats, Ollie speaks with Bird, asking what's going on here. And when Bird gets bandaged up, he asks him, "What does it have to do with you?" The Great White Hope? Shouldn't you be somewhere washing the tights? Ollie says that the pipeline might be legal, but the violence against the protesters isn't. Anybody who tries to silence that right is going to get bullied right back, and besides that, he has a personal reason for being here. Elsewhere in the forest, Dinah tells Roy that she knows. Ollie isn't the easiest person to get along with. Roy fires an arrow into the water, telling him that he's impossible to get along with. He puts on the whole, I'm all about the little guy show, but he grew up with everything and thinks he deserves everything. Dinah says, actually, Ollie lost everything. His fortune, his father's legacy, his best friend. He's desperate to hold onto anything that he values from his past. In fighting amongst the allies, this is how they lose. An election, a war, a family, or even a friendship. Back with Ollie, he watches the news off of his phone as he sees a Sheriff Graham Jones telling everyone that the militia isn't the bad guys here. In fact, they're the patriots fighting for the billions of American dollars. The report goes on asking Cyrus about the radical group, and he tells the news that the pipeline has been approved by the relevant authorities. As for the Wild Dog militia, he knows nothing of it. Ollie then says Roy is right. This is his fault. A little while later, Roy goes to check on Bird, and as Roy asks how everything is, Bird notices their father's bracelet on his wrist. Roy tells him, yeah, he still has it, just like he still has his bow. And Bird looks Roy in the eyes and tells him, you killed our father. Even if you heard it 100 times, one more won't hurt. Roy says that if he did, he doesn't remember. He was a blackout drunk, and when he woke up, he found him at the bottom of a canyon, but he couldn't have. Roy then thinks back to when he was still living with Ollie, and Ollie came home when he was throwing a party. He passed out from the booze and the drugs, and that's when Ollie told him that he was a loser and a mistake. That's when the Green Arrow and Speedy team dissolved. Back in the current time, Ollie gathers everyone around and tells them that Queen Industries is behind this. It's not just the pipeline, but the militia. Bird's protest is working to stop the construction, but Cyrus hired the Wild Dogs to push everyone out. Dinah asks if they have any proof, and Ollie says not yet. That's what they have to show to their media contact. Right now, he's got Fife and Emmy scanning the records to see if any contact between those two groups has happened. Roy steps up, stating, you are in charge. And Ollie says, fair enough. Can we fight with you? Or can we fight for you? He looks back at Bird, and Bird says Green Arrow is right. Some masked bastards rigged the game. Only the masked bastards can unrig it. Roy then says it's happening. Green Arrow, Arsenal, and Black Canary fighting together again. As they begin to set out, the group notices speeding construction vehicles passing by, and Roy says that they should probably follow their lead. Ollie tells him, all right, let's do this, partner. A little while later at the construction site, Dinah rides in screaming, stunning most of the guards, and inside the construction vehicles are Ollie and Roy. Roy begins to fire down on the militia when Ollie takes the stolen vehicle and scoops the men up, knocking them away. As the fighting begins, Roy notices Graham getting away, and Ollie asks where is he going. They've almost got him. Roy hops on his Jeep and he tells them, not all of them, and Ollie asks, do you need my help? Roy speeds off, stating, not anymore. You should have asked me that years ago. As Roy catches up to Graham, he rams into the back of the car, launching Graham out of it. He gets out of the Jeep, and as Graham tries to run ahead, he shouts, asking, why do you even care? You don't even know what we're doing out here. Roy pulls an arrow out, telling him, wrong. Queen Industries hired you. And Graham shouts back, wrong! We're fighting the Indians for getting in the way of construction. It's American jobs we're fighting for. As Roy stands over Graham, he begins to remember something. Graham's voice. He's heard it before. He starts to think back to the night his father was killed. Back to the night he was locked in a dark closet in the back of his brain. He had broken into the liquor store not long before, but while he was drinking, Graham came to the reservation. Graham came to arrest him, but his father, Big Bo, refused. The two clashed many times in the past already over fishing rights and development, casinos, all of that. Big Bo had saved him from a forest fire that killed his parents, and right now he was trying to save him from himself. It was the sheriff that killed him, Sheriff Graham Jones. When he woke up from being drunk, of course he would believe that he was the one who killed him. Back in the current time, Roy holds out an arrow ready to stab it into Graham, but Ollie shouts for him to stop. Roy doesn't say anything, setting down Graham, and Ollie tells him, you're not a killer. This man can prove the link between the Wild Dogs and Queen Industries. Roy lets go, telling him, I'm not sparing Graham because you said so. And then he begins to take off Big Bo's bracelet. As the bracelet is let go off the cliff, Roy says, Big Bo's body was found down there, and I wished I could have thrown away the blame, but I've always carried it with me. None of this would have happened if I hadn't become an addict. Ollie tells him, you beat the addiction. Now you're beating this. And for that, I'm proud of you. He goes on telling him, I know I should have said that a long time ago when you needed it most. And Roy then says, from what I hear, you're the one in trouble these days. So it isn't an easy question to ask or one for me to answer, but how can I help you? And there you have it, the locations of Roy Harper. We're going to be going on with the Green Arrow storyline because it becomes really epic, and you finally get to find out what's going to happen with the entire Ninth Circle. Now, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date as to what's happening with Green Arrow, and you'll get some more Flash, Supergirl, and your other favorite CW TV shows covered here in their comic book iterations. Click the link right here to see the Green Arrow playlist. Over here, I'll give you the Flash playlist, and the subscription button will be somewhere on the screen right now. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you next time right here